Sascha Coupe is in Europe's icebox in Arvidsjaur, Sweden, where it's minus 25 degrees Celsius. He's here to test the 221 kilowatt Golf R. He doesn't expect to get anywhere near the rated 7.1 liter fuel consumption, though. He's here to practice driving on ice. But before a car tester can get out on the frozen lake, he has to take a special driving safety course. The Volkswagen Driving Experience Training Course runs the world's northernmost driving safety center here. Depending on the weather, Arctic automotive adventurers can come here to get experience driving on ice and snow between February and late March. Driving instructor Benjamin Leuchter has the participants turn donuts so they can learn to control a drifting car, a situation they don't encounter every day out driving in the city. For the day's first exercise, the participants learn about drifting, and their car is no less than the most powerful Golf that VW has to offer. And that's the car we're going to take a closer look at. Any driver who's experienced the Golf R in action on snow and ice will hardly want to go back to dry roads. Turning donuts is more fun. This is the sportiest series-produced Golf, and it looks it. It proudly wears the R in its grille and on the rear so other drivers can see just what drifted past them. The participants here quickly realize it takes lots of practice to learn to control a drift. Meanwhile, we can take a peek at the Golf R's interior. Typically for the Golf, the cockpit is uncluttered. No unnecessary gadgetry to distract the driver from what's important, the view of the road. The seats provide lateral support, the better for the driver to feel the road underneath. The speedometer goes all the way up to 320 kilometers per hour, but the car is electronically limited to 250. Back on the ice, this Golf's been used as a dog sled without the dogs. The front air intakes have to be cleared of snow to keep the 2-liter turbo 4-cylinder engine from overheating in spite of the cold. Benjamin Leuchter says everyone should take some driving training once a year. The instructors themselves take training every year. He says it's important to get a fine sense of how the car turns on the ice. That's what drivers can learn at the Volkswagen Driving Experience in Sweden.
Das Auto sich dreht. Und das kriegt man hier bei uns bei der Volkswagen Driving Experience in Schweden mit.
Some learn quickly, others learn not as quickly.
Here you want to go. Look to me, look to me, look to me. Here you want to go. Don't look at the snow wall. When you feel that you're going too fast, never look to the snow wall. Always look in that direction where you want to go.
The 380 Newton meters of torque have to be kept on a tight leash. The standard all-wheel drive grips the road and helps to push the Golf R from 0 to 100 in 5.1 seconds. Sascha Coupe would be happy just to begin to learn to drive like this. Benjamin Leuchter tries to give his students a good start in just 4 days, depending on the driving experience they bring to the training course. Now it's time for Sascha to take the wheel. Benjamin Leuchter is highly impressed with the enhanced engine performance, with its 300 horsepower pushing all 4 wheels. He says the car is a success all around. He especially likes the new Haldex drive coupling, saying it responds much faster than the one in the 6th generation Golf R. He says the car is easy and safe to drive, even for the average Joe. It's easy to control in extreme situations. Driving the Golf R on ice is almost addicting. He can hardly let go of it. After his drifting experience, Sasha is all but speechless, but it's an experience that costs around 2,900 euros altogether. The driving experience here in Avardjauer, Sweden is definitely not cheap, but Sasha has seldom had as much fun in 4 days, especially not in a Golf R. Fiat presents the 500L, the 1960 Cinquecento revisited. This baby is a retro-style design conceived for long trips. The original 500 played the same role in Italy as the Beetle did in Germany, says our reviewer Mattes, a compact car that mobilized the masses. In 2007, the Italians remembered what a pretty car it was and decided to relaunch it. Back in the 60s, the L version stood for luxury. Today it means large. But actually, the new 500L is more a Fiat Punto. Mattes is going to put it through its paces and see what it can do. The design is a winner. The round forms are pleasing to the eye, and like various chrome trim details, pay tribute to the old Fiat 500. From the outside, it looks like the 500L has lots of trunk space. It holds 400 liters, but a German Shepherd would hardly have enough space for a nice ride. But it will hold plenty of potatoes, bags and bags of them. The seats can be folded down in 2 ways, producing 1,310 liters of cargo space, enough for 5,000 spuds. Mattes takes the 500L onto a country road where it cuts a good figure. The suspension provides a good feeling for the road without being uncomfortable. The steering is a bit soft, with a slack response, but it's a safe and secure ride nonetheless. Mattes likes the front field of vision and the additional windows in front of the door. The back window is narrow, making it hard to judge where the car ends when in reverse. The 500L's interior has lots of pleasing vintage-style details. Little design touches can be found everywhere. The sat-nav is mounted on the dashboard. Mattes would have preferred it integrated into the stereo system. The radio provides good sound. The lounge version's interior is extra stylish. The back seats even have tray tables for longer trips. The seats are comfortable, but too short. Taller folk will find their legs hanging in the air. Even Mattes, not so big, has 10 unsupported centimeters of leg. With its 88 kilowatts of power, the Fiat 500L is not a powerhouse, but it can zip along nicely, with a top speed of 183 kilometers an hour. The 1.6-liter diesel version consumes 4.8 liters of fuel for 100 kilometers. Not bad at all. Long trips aren't unnecessarily expensive. The Lounge Edition with the big diesel engine costs 22,150 euros. Mattes says the engine doesn't feel at home at low revs, around 1,500 per minute. It starts to work better at about 1,800 revs, and then it moves forward well. The Lounge version also has a panorama glass roof. That and the large windows mean the interior is flooding with light, and also provide the passengers with a good view. Mattes really likes the panorama roof and the incredible feeling for space it gives the Fiat 500L. So the 500L has more to offer than good looks. Our tester summary: the Fiat 500L's driving qualities are convincing, and the price is acceptable. But to be honest, it doesn't have much in common with the real Fiat 500, apart from some design elements. Families will be interested to hear that the Fiat 500L also comes in a 7-seat version with a third row of seats. Flowing contours, bereft of unsightly corners and edges. A streamlined design that looks futuristic today. But this car is a cousin of the original Volkswagen Bug. The man who created it was Ferdinand Porsche. And the car was a design precursor to the production model that would make his name world famous. The Porsche 64 was a very limited edition with just 3 built. The aerodynamic form helped boost its top speed to 160 kilometers per hour. The car is of huge value to Porsche, explains Thomas Koenig, co-founder of a classic cars museum in Hamburg. It was one of Ferdinand Porsche's dreams. He wanted to build racing cars and products for the people. The Porsche 64 was created in 1939 in parallel with the original Volkswagen, the Beetle. Ferdinand Porsche was head of VW at the time. The 64 was supposed to compete in a high-profile race from Berlin to Rome organized to promote the Hitler and Mussolini regimes. The race was canceled due to the outbreak of World War II. It would have been among the favorites. The aerodynamics and lightweight construction were ahead of their time. The 64 is housed in his museum, located in Hamburg's redeveloped Hafen City Docks area. The unique collection on display focuses on post-war German racing car heritage, and therefore Porsche. It was a personal mission for Thomas Koenig and Oliver Schmidt. The two friends had always been fascinated by Porsche models. That interest evolved over the years, and eventually they said, there's more to German post-war motorsports than just Porsche. It was the post-war Reconstruction era that really interested them, a time when car makers had very modest means at their disposal. One of those pioneers was Automotive, a racing driver from Austria. He built and drove this curious-looking contraption. After his death in 1995, the museum bought that Porsche Volkswagen Mongrel as well as Mate's spare parts collection. Thomas Koenig had no idea of the treasure trove he'd accidentally acquired. We were fascinated by Automotive. Having a paralyzed arm did not stop him from becoming a successful racing driver. He also drove Porsche cars, technically the very first. Mate had close personal ties to the Porsche family. In 1949, he purchased the only 64 still running and drove it in races. It was while rummaging around in old boxes belonging to Mate that Thomas Koenig discovered parts from the second 64 model, and now takes pride of place in the museum. The biggest problem was the missing body, he recalls. They took the model they already had as a template, but as each model was an experimental vehicle, there were a lot of differences. Restoring that second 64 to its former glory took the best part of a decade. But you won't find this beauty gracing the streets. In terms of automotive historical value, it's inestimable. The 4-cylinder boxer engine with a displacement just short of 1 liter was a product of Volkswagen. The air-cooled engine with 2 carburetors generated around 35 horsepower. It was a case of form following function in a most appealing fashion. Once reconstructed, however, the family resemblance to the Volkswagen Beetle is undeniable. The other 64 purchased by Automotive is now owned by a Munich-based corporate group. This unique aerodynamic body was designed by Erwin Komenda, also the man behind the Volkswagen, as well as the record-breaking Mercedes T80 later on. All these projects were overseen by Ferdinand Porsche. The specifications book from back then must have included elements of the Volkswagen. You can recognize the form of the Beetle in the ribbing here, in the hood at the front, and then at the rear we find these air inlets that were featured in the Beetle too. Those in the know will recognize what you could call a squashed Beetle. And the basis for later rear-engine Porsche models, the 356 and the 911. The interior is pure Porsche, sober, if not in fact Spartan. The awesome 64, the first racing car ever to bear the famous Porsche name.